So first up, what you're looking up right now is the main entrance to Buckingham Palace. This is of course, the Queen's official residence, and the entrance hall itself was actually part of a more modest residence, which was known as Buckingham House. Buckingham House was purchased by George III in 1761. His son George IV appointed architect John Nash to turn his home into a palace fit for a king, as he said, and that's what we see today. So normally it's been very before before John the Fourth or George the Fourth redid everything. It was much more of a modest house. Obviously, probably larger than most of our houses. But still not quite as extravagant as what we see today. The other good example of this is where the Prime Minister lives in England is a very fairly normal looking place, and the royal family's house was the same way up until George the Fourth redid it. So first up, we're going to look at the marble columns that we're seeing here in the Grand Hall. There are 104 marble columns installed in the Grand Entrance, Grand Hall, and the Marble Hall. Each marble column was formed from one block of Tuscan marble. So a lot of times when they make columns like this, they make them in pieces and they piece them together. These columns are special because it was made from one whole block, which doesn't happen too often. It takes a lot of work to do that. It took a team of 17 horses to haul a single 24-ton block to the palace. So when the palace was built, of course, it was there wasn't a lot of mechanical stuff. It was done by literal horsepower. So it took 17 horses to haul one of these columns, and each column weighs 24 tons. Pretty crazy. So the Grand Entrance, what we were looking at back here at the stairway, this is where ambassadors arrive for audiences with the Queen. Garden party and evening reception guests also enter the palace here. It's also where the Queen welcomes heads of state on the first day of a state visit. So when the President of the United States comes to England, this room is where they first meet, and they go ahead and then they start from here. So this is kind of like the meeting room, the waiting room of the palace. This room, of course, a lot of people see, and this room is also seen on a lot of TV broadcasts as well. Next up, we're going to look at the grand staircase a little bit closer. So this grand staircase, we're actually looking down from it right now. This grand staircase was added by George IV when he was king, when he became king in 1821. The expensive grand staircase is among the first things visitors see when they're entering the palace, and first impressions really count, as George IV would say. Designed to impart a sense of excitement in visitors, the stairs take guests from a comparative darkness of the Grand Hall into the bright lit staircase and the staircase is actually, you can kind of see it because of course these pictures are taken with a 3D camera. So the camera is actually blurred out on these. If the camera weren't there, that's where the dome was, and it really lights up the entire area, this entire staircase. You can kind of see the contrast from the Grand Hall. You can see it's pretty dark, and then you go into the grand staircase and it's just filled with light. And of course, massive pictures hung up all over the place, and ornate gold detailing. Up here is called the Balustrade. So architect John Nash came up with the spectacular design for the balustrade, which skilled craftsmen made out of expensive metal, which is bronze. The whole thing was covered with a thin layer of gold. In this process of taking bronze and covering it with gold is called gilding. And it's a very tedious process. It's very expensive, and of course, as we can see from this, it looks just absolutely gorgeous because of the gold coloring, obviously. And that gilding is actual real gold. It's not a fake gold that's just made to look that color. That is actual real gold. So as you kind of saw before, the staircase, the grand staircase, is lined in family portraits. Those aren't just pictures of random people. They're all family members of the royal family. They're full length portraits too. A lot of times with portraits, back in the day before cameras were invented, portraits were made by an artist drawing or painting the portrait. So a lot of times, famous portraits you'll see from about here up, it's called the bust. You'll see a bust of a portrait, and it's because it just takes so long for the artist to draw the whole body. So if you see pictures that are full length from head to toe, that means that's probably a pretty important person, because the artist took a long time to make that portrait, and it probably cost a lot of money as well, even back then. These portraits are members of Queen Victoria's immediate family, including her grandparents George III and Queen Charlotte, her parents the Duke and Duchess of Kent, and her predecessor to the throne, her uncle William IV. Next up, we're going to go to the Green Drawing Room. So the Green Drawing Room, if you could guess, it got its name because of the color of the walls. Some people are not a huge fan of that color. It's a little bit pukey green, if you like that term. But it's how the color has been for a very long time, and it has a very special reason why that color is the way it is. So architect John Nash, most of these rooms were created after George IV revamped the entire palace. And so John Nash did a lot of this work. John Nash created the magnificent stateroom out of what was the central room of Buckingham House. So a lot of houses, if you study old architecture, even smaller houses, they were all centered in a room in the middle, and then there were rooms that kind of spoked off of that main central room, and that had a lot to do with gathering. It had a lot to do with holding in heat for the home, and so it did have its purposes. The Buckingham House, which later became Buckingham Palace, was that way too. A central room with wings on all sides. So this is the central room, the Green Drawing Room. And the double height ceiling is one of a series designed by Nash at Buckingham Palace. Chandeliers, mirrors, and candelabra enhance the sparkling effect of light and space. And so if you look up here, it's pretty neat, where the chandeliers are all crystal, and they have this sparkle to them. The candelabras on the walls also have a gold tint to them. Even the walls, if you look real closely, the walls kind of have a bit of gilding on them as well. And then up the top, the ceiling, of course, is all gilded in gold. I'm not sure that the mold lighting up there, I'm not sure if that was probably added at a much later date. I don't think they would have that back, even when electricity was added to Buckingham Palace. I'm not sure if they would have had that type of lighting up there. A lot of lighting back in the day, sometimes houses have very extravagant lighting because they want to showcase something. Most lighting back in the day was done on purpose. It was to light the room. It wasn't to showcase the ceiling or anything like that. The room has always been hung with green silk, originally woven in Ireland on the instruction of Queen Adelaide, wife of Henry IV. It was changed in 1864, and replacements have been followed every 30 years since. And so that's why it's the green color. Originally, it was green silk from Ireland. We kind of think of green as the color of the main. When we always think of green, we associate green with Ireland, so it makes sense, and that's how it always has been. And so they've been changing it every year, every 30 years since then. They hang new green silk up in the green drawing room. If they hung a different color, it wouldn't be able to be called the green drawing room anymore. So they just got to keep hanging up the green. So the one of the pictures that we're going to check out here is it's called it's Daughters, and so this is a painting of the three youngest daughters of George III who grew up in Buckingham House. The artist is trying to convey what the three sisters really loved each other and enjoyed playing with each other. So most of these, the same as the main entrance, the grand entrance. All of the pictures that are in Buckingham Palace, of course, are family members from some generation or another. And this one happens to be the three sisters who imagine growing up in such a place like this. It'd be really pretty amazing. Now, these are the sisters of George III, so they actually grew up in Buckingham House, not Buckingham Palace. So it would have been a little bit more low-key than what Buckingham Palace was. Next up, we're going to go up to the throne room. Much different, a little bit different feel, and then we've got the Buckingham Palace tour guide in this shot. Much different feel than what the green drawing room is. The throne room is quite a bit more elegant. It's stately. The color of red has been known to kind of it's kind of the color of class and elegance. So it's very much red, and the chandeliers are incredible. Solid crystal, of course, and gold, and pretty amazing room. A dramatic theater of pageantry of the monarchy. Everything here is arranged to focus on the two center thrones under a grand canopy. So that's what we're looking at right now. And if you were to walk in this room, you could notice that everything, and you can kind of notice in this too, everything goes to that. So you walk in from that door right there that we're facing right now, and everything, your attention always constantly goes to those two thrones that are up front. Nothing comes out. There are no wings that you can go, and you can't go left, you can't go right. You have to go forward, and you have to come in contact with the two thrones at some point in time. And that was very, very much because it was that this room is meant to showcase the king and the queen. Through the friezes and heraldry around the upper sections of the room, the medieval pageantry of George IV's coronation in 1821, it was Queen Victoria who first made use of the throne room, with its chandeliers lit by over 200 candles. Of course, because at that time electricity was not in the palace. It hosted spectacular costume balls throughout the 1840s. So what we're looking at right there in the middle, of course, are the thrones. The thrones have the initials of the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh on them. They were used during the Queen's coronation at Westminster Abbey in 1953, but are no longer sat upon when guests are welcome here. So they're kind of off limits. You do not set on the royal furniture when you're there. Over to the, it's actually built in the ceiling. Hopefully you can see it. So it's the middle section of, and you can kind of look up there and see the different patterns Those are the coat of arms. All around the ceiling are the coats of arms from England, Ireland, Scotland, and Hanover. Centuries ago, knights had symbols like these on their armor and shield, so people would know what side they were on battle for. So if you can see up along that all of those areas, it has a different coat of arms. And even if you go, yeah, over here's that's about the best shot of it without making anybody too dizzy from looking up like that, right? So over here, I'm gonna get back down on the ground. The if special events were held in the throne room, this spot is where the thrones are located and have been used as a setting for royal wedding photography or photographs, including those of the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, and most recently the Duck, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, who is and I can't remember who I can't remember who that would be. I'm not good with royal families. It's the if anybody knows, go ahead and type it in the chat box. I can't remember which royal couple that is. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Is that that might be the current? I can't remember. So we've been talking a little bit about electricity and lighting, and I said, originally there was no electricity. Though it was originally illuminated by gas lamps, which is something that even most homes, when it was built, didn't have. Most homes when this was built were candle lit, but of course, royal home would be lit with the gas lamp. And then, of course, candles as well. In 1883, Buckingham Palace had a brand new technology installed, electric light, which of course we don't think of as to William and Kate. Thank you. I believe that is the correct Duck and Duke. I don't know why I keep saying Duck. Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, William and Kate. That's correct. Thank you. And so the palace today, this is pretty amazing. This is some good trivia for somebody that no one's going to know. But there's over 40,000 light bulbs throughout the palace today. 40,000 light bulbs. Imagine your house. Go through your house tonight and count how many light bulbs in your house. And you won't even. I mean, maybe 20, 30, 40, maybe if your house is fairly large and you have a lot of lights. But imagine 40,000 light bulbs. It's crazy. I hope they've alternated on installing them, because can you imagine if all of your light bulbs go so a light bulb has a typical lifespan, and so all of your light bulbs go at the same time. You're going around the palace changing 40,000 of those. It'd be quite a job. The interesting part about this room, of course, is the ceiling as well. A lot of palaces and stuff had very ornate ceilings, and there's a lot of artwork and a lot of sculpture that's on the ceilings. Today we don't think of it as something that would happen. Most houses, or even if we can think of the fanciest house we could ever think of that's modern, that's been built with the past 10 years, fanciest house or fanciest building or something, whatever, some sort of structure we can think of, and even that is going to have pretty normal looking ceilings. Art was a huge part of life back when Buckingham Palace was built, and so in order to get the most out of every space, why not put the art on the ceiling as well? The throne room ceiling is the emblem of the Order of the Garter, the most senior British order of chivalry. Historically, the throne room was used in vestries when official honors are bestowed on individuals in recognition of their outstanding service. And so this is used. This room is also used not only for receptions of the king and queen, but when the king and the queen knight someone, or you become a I'm at a loss for words today again. So knighting, and then when the daming, I don't think that's the correct term, but when a citizen becomes a dame, like Helen Mirren, the famous actress Dame Helen Mirren, and then when you become a knight, you become Sir. So Sir Anthony Hopkins is another famous person that has become knighted. This is where that takes place, where that ceremony takes place. And of course, it's a very, very fancy and very prestigious ceremony. So next, we're going to go over to the picture gallery, which this is one of my favorite rooms because of the ceiling. I think it's got a really neat ceiling on it. In it. So located in the very center of the palace is this prominent setting for George IV's picture collection. It's 47 meters long and was created by knocking together 3 rooms of the original Buckingham house. Designed as one of the palace's principal reception rooms, the picture gallery accommodates several hundred guests at a time. It's used for banquets in support of charities and organizations with royal patrons. Recipients of honors also assemble here before being led into the ballroom for the investries. So one of the pictures we're going to talk about here is a picture of Venice, the piazza towards St. Giorgio Maggiore by Canaletto. Like the scenic view of Piazza and Piazza San Marco, many of Venetian artists Canaletto's. I thought if you watched the virtual field trip with the different dinosaur names, I kind of feel, and I butchered a lot of dinosaur names. So you should be used to by now of me horribly butchering names. I apologize. So they're not completely accurate. Sometimes he would make buildings taller or move them closer together in order to improve the painting's composition. So this is something interesting that some artists did, and it kind of says something about history. And we a lot of times, as a historian, you look at either historical writings or you look at pictures, paintings, and that kind of stuff. Some artists had kind of an artist rendition of what they thought that a place should look like. And so if that's the only thing we have to go on, then we might not know exactly how some of these places looked. And it's been known that some of the artists did embellish some of their paintings a little bit to make them look a little bit better, or to make them look more symmetrical, to make it more look like a painting, because it's a piece of art. It's not supposed to be meant for a historical context. It's supposed to be enjoyed, and it's supposed to look like art. So that's exactly what these artists did. And sometimes it's kind of if you think about it, you kind of think to yourself, did it actually look like that? Same thing with people, famous people. As I said, there were no cameras, so famous people were painted, and if the artists were maybe to brush up a little bit better to make them look a little bit better, they did that. And very similar to today, Photoshop exists. It's like the modern version of an artist making a picture look a little bit better by using Photoshop. So it's still happening today. I like this room though. It'd be really cool to be in it during a rainstorm, I think. There's actually I live in Toledo, and at the Toledo Museum of Art, there's a room, one of the galleries is very similar to this, with the kind of the similar ceiling. It's one of my favorite galleries in that museum. Next up, we're going to go into the ballroom. And we're standing at right now. We're standing where the thrones are, but there's a little bit of a better. This is a much larger room than the other two that we've seen. Or the other three that we've seen. After Queen Victoria complained about the lack of sufficient space in Buckingham Palace for entertaining many guests, many is the key word. She would sometimes entertain up to 2,000 people at one time. And architect Edward Bloor drew up plans for this enormous room, completed in 1855. You could fit 72 London double-decker buses in this room. 72 buses in this room. It's enormous, enormous room. Here you can see the ballroom arranged for an investor ceremony, so knighting ceremony. But it also acts as the dramatic setting for lavish state banquets held for visiting heads of state. So you kind of see the U pattern with benches. Those benches can be taken out, and the chairs obviously in the middle can be taken out. And it can be one giant open place. We have any organ lovers? There's a giant organ, and this painted and gilded organ waist made in 1817 for the music room at Brighton's Royal Pavilion. It was moved to London, when the pavilion was sold in 1846. It was last restored in 2002 for the Queen's Golden Jubilee. So if there were a banquet that were to go on in this room, the dining set used for state banquets is over 200 years old. So if you ever get invited to a banquet at the Royal Palace, just know that you're eating on some really, really old dining ware. And it's still used today. Most of the knives, forks, plates, and serving dishes were all made by George IV, as he had commissioned such a grand and vast service. No monarch since has had to replace it. So even if a lot of us have to throw away a plate from here and there, it gets chipped, or a piece of silverware gets bent, or loses a tooth or something like that. This was such a large piece of dinnerware that it's never had to been replaced. And it's pretty awesome to think about that. There's a lot of famous people, tons of really, really, really famous people that have dined in Buckingham Palace. And to think that if you were ever to go there, which I'm not sure if, there are a lot of people from the United States that do get to go there, mostly I think politicians and famous people. But if you ever get to go there and dine with that dining ware, it's amazing to think that and actually kind of gross too, the spoon that you're putting in your mouth could have been in the mouth of some very famous person hundreds of years ago. Pretty amazing. Next up, we're going to go up to the white drawing room, and not the most creative names, as you notice, but this room's pretty cool. The giant chandelier in the middle is really pretty awesome. I like that. The white drawing room, of course, it's named white drawing room because much like the green drawing room, it's white. The grand white drawing room features one of architect John Nash's most original ceiling designs. John Nash was very known for his ceiling designs. This one's very detailed. It's pretty neat. It's here the guests are presented to Her Majesty the Queen during receptions held at the palace. The Queen often enters from a secret door that we'll see, I believe. It's on, yeah, the secret door, we'll actually see where that secret door is. That offers a discreet means of entering the staterooms from private apartments beyond. So obviously, as the royal family, they're not living in the rooms that we're seeing. They're living in it. This is the Buckingham Palace is much like the White House, where most of the building is not the actual house of the royal family. There's a smaller, still fairly large, but smaller section that they actually live in. The room has been used as a backdrop for a number of formal photographic portraits of the members of the royal family. and you could see why. It's just a it's really a neat looking room. It might be, I don't know. I like the ceiling on the glass ceiling on the other room, but I do like the way that this room looks. It just has, it's just it's busy. It's very busy. A lot going on in that room. So there's in the room over there in the corner, there's a rising or roll top desk. This desk is original. It was made between 1775 and 1780 in Paris. This desk is decorated with marquetry featuring panels of flowers and fruit. The lower section drawers can only be opened when the roll top desk is fully open and one has a hidden compartment in it. So it's pretty neat. It's kind of cool to think about the mechanicals, because in 1775, when this was made, there wasn't a lot of, there wasn't a lot of mechanical, a lot of furniture did not have a lot of mechanisms in it. So to think that this desk, these types of desks, until the roll top is open, you can't open a drawer. That's a pretty big feat. There's a lot of inner workings in that roll top desk that make that happen. Oh, so the secret door. There you go. It's behind that mirror, over in the corner. The far end of the room, on either side of the portrait of Queen Alexandra, are two tall mirrors. The one on the left is a secret door. When it opens, the whole mirror and cabinet below swing forward. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'd like to have a secret door in my house. I think it'd be fun. Next up, we have the aired piano. It's one of the most unique pianos. This beautiful grand piano, intended as a stateroom showpiece, was purchased from S&P Aired in 1856. The gilded case is decorated in the French early 18th century style and required painstaking conservation to restore its worn condition in 2009. And they did a really good job at restoring it. It looks good. Pretty neat piano. I doubt if you ever visit the white drawing room, you will get a chance to play that piano. I think it's probably off limits to visitors, I would imagine. And that is all we have for Buckingham Palace. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, and or you can unmute yourself as well and ask any questions if you'd like to. I do have a really short evaluation that I would appreciate if you could fill that out.